So I'm in Kuala Lumpur right now. That's the in the background, the tallest building in the city in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I'm reading this book about the current prime minister. It's written by Charles Allers, who himself has had a really interesting life. He's an American who grew up in New York, and he became a preacher in Southern California. Along the way, he majored or got a graduate degree in Islamic studies. And so this book is really good. It's just Anwar Ibrahim. And one of the reasons that Malaysia is such an interesting place, if you're thinking about a place to go to, a lot of people on these digital lists, digital nomad lists, you've got Spain, you've got so many other places. For some reason, Malaysia is left off the list, unjustly so. And the history of this place is amazing. People think that politics in America is, more similar to a professional wrestling bout than a more dignified, profession. But in fact, Malaysia has an even more interesting history because of colonization. And so, in fact, this gentleman over here, the prime minister, was, when he was younger, arrested for participating in an illegal student protest. Now, there's no habeas corpus at that time. I'm not even sure if there's one now. I'm not a lawyer in this country. And so ultimately, he was the ruling party that had passed laws making student protests illegal, effectively, tried to convince him, because he was an up-and-coming star, always very, very astute, very, very bright. And so but he refused. He said, I'm not going to, be subjected to this coercion, this political coercion. So they kept him in jail. And I'm sort of reminded of, of Mr. Khan in Pakistan right now as well, who's just staying in jail even though he's got other options. But Anwar, again, it just decided, I'm not going to be coerced. I refuse, let the chips fall where they may. And ultimately, he was eventually released because of his, and eventually aligned with the former prime minister, Tun Mahathir, who was a doctor who grew up on a dirt floor. And ultimately, Anwar became Mahathir's protege. And so when you think about why Malaysia is successful, despite a very similar chaotic political structure or situation like the United States, I think you have to talk about food. And, no matter what, and a lack of segregation, especially compared to the United States, because of a very good public transportation system. So ultimately, of course, you have economic segregation. When the British showed up, I think what they did, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but they basically said, all right, you're in textiles, we're going to put you all in one place. You can't really compete with each other, right? We can sort of use competition and segregation to give ourselves the best prices. And maybe we'll get an exclusive license to ship the cotton or the poplin or whatever it is. So you walk around the street and you still see evidence of economic segregation. But again, that's still minimized because, you're going to want to try Punjabi food. So you're going to go to Little India. If you want good Chinese food, you're going to go to Chinatown. And what's happened over time is that because of tourism and just normal people wanting to try different kinds of cuisines, you've got a lot of movement between different districts. So even though the most affluent district would be Damansara, even though a lot of the expatriates or foreigners would be living in Mont Kiara, you can walk down the street over here in one of the quote-unquote less affluent districts, and it's fine. It's relatively safe. You don't see any problems at all for the most part, and you've got this delicious food. In fact, about 500 meters from here, the former prime minister, Tun Mahathir, this is a casual restaurant, showed up about 2 weeks ago just to have a meal. And it wasn't really advertised. It was just a little it's not a billboard, but some sort of a tarp, advertising tarp that was displayed over the restaurant. So, you're looking at a very, very unique country, and you also see the power of food. And I think that's one of the things that binds people together, especially even whether you're traveling or whether you're here. It's very hard to be upset if you're able to enjoy a good meal, particularly if you happen to be sitting down next to somebody who might be different from you and you're able to just converse with that person. Last time I went to that restaurant, I think I met some people from Kenya who were working over here as engineers. So again, you can see why the hawker centers in Singapore were also so successful when they were outside. And, you had a lot of chances for random and possibly fruitful interactions. Anyway, there you go. If you're looking at Malaysia, that's a good book. And I hope you're doing well wherever you are.